Hey, what's up? This is Sifu Kuttel and welcome to Tai Chi Connection, the series where we look at the movements between the movements. Now today we're going to be working from cloud hands to a single whip position, one of the most classic Tai Chi positions. Now before we get started, I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. First off is making sure that when you step in, you have your foot pivoted already. We don't need to set the foot down, lift up the toes, and then re-pivot to put it in the correct position. When you step down, already have it at that angle. The second thing I want you to pay attention to is one of the classic Tai Chi principles in keeping your elbows bent and down. So you don't want to lock out your elbow during any part of this technique, and even though I may bend my elbows, if they're pointing straight out to the side, I lose a lot of energy because I have to use my shoulder to lift rather than keeping the shoulders relaxed and keeping connection to the waist when I use this movement. So keep the elbows down, slightly bent, watch where you're stepping, and let's get to work. The first thing I'd like to look at as you're doing this is what I mentioned earlier in the introduction, and that is the angle of the toes when you step in. So we're starting from our third line stance as we're doing cloud hands, and as I step in, I don't need to step down, then shift the weight, raise the toes, pivot the foot so that I can set up to step out for a bow stance to the side. That's too much extra work. You also don't want to get caught in the habit of stepping in, keeping these toes pointing here, and then trying to step out to a bow stance to this side. This is not only a weird position for your bow stance, you're not going to get as much press, but it also makes your knee point in the wrong direction. So my knee is pointing this way, my toes are pointing this way, and that's going to put a lot of extra strain on the inside of my knee, which could lead to pain and injury. So spare yourself that by keeping in mind toes and knees pointing in the same direction. Okay? Now, let's take a couple of steps so we can move in from our cloud hands to that point. Okay? So I'll start with my hands up. I'm going to step out, do the change, come across cloud hands 1, and then cloud hands 2. Now as I step in, I will already put my foot down at that angle. So I have that 45-degree angle in comparison to my 90-degree over here, where I'm going to point my toes forward for my next position. I don't need to do a full step in at this point. It's really just a half step because you want it to be the same weight as our balance position. If we were just going to start any Tai Chi technique from here. Okay, so that's the distance that I use for myself, and it's not a standard. This one is kind of more of a personal distance, is that I always think that the knees are about to touch, okay? So this is where I know I don't have to look at my feet. I know where I'm at. I can shift the weight. I can put the weight over this foot easily, and then just open the hip to turn my foot out on this side. So it makes it much, much easier for that, okay? And it puts me in the proper position for my bow stance. Okay, now let's work on the hands. So again, we'll start feet together. We have the hand up. We're going to step out, cloud hands, come across 1, change, cloud hands 2. Now as I step in, I'm going to raise my hook hand up to the height of my extended palm. Coming from my cloud hands, this one does not have to really move anywhere. I shouldn't have to reach out further for this to happen. As I'm finishing turning and I step here, it's already a good extension. One of the things that you try to shortcut when you get to this part is keeping the body at one side. So I keep my upper body here. Notice the line on the uniform, and then I try to reach my arms across. This is not going to put you at a proper distance, and it's going to force you to withdraw your palm. So make sure, turn your upper body. By the time I'm stepping in, my shoulders and the center line of my body are now pointing to where I'm going to be doing my single whip, okay? Again, let's go ahead and take it from the first change, our first cloud hands, our second cloud hands. Step, bring up that hook hand, and I should be at wrist to wrist. From here, I'm going to adjust, step my foot out, as the toes come down, and then shift forward. Now in this shift, this is where you really want to have two things in mind. There's two Tai Chi principles. We want to think of extension. My back heel is pushing into the ground. My front foot is also pushing, but it's also guiding forward. So I still want to think of extending the legs on this. I keep extension of the spine, so I'm not hunching over and I'm not trying to get too far forward here. But also I want to extend the arms. So when you start, you don't want to start too bent and then make an appearance of actually reaching out like this. When the arms, they should be more or less extended already, but at the last part you want to extend and you want to have equal energy in both hands. Meaning that once we're here with the hook hand, palm, I want to have a little extra extension. The good thing is, this is correct. The bad thing is, it is easy to make the mistake of locking everything out. You don't want to have locked out elbows. That's the thing I was mentioning earlier. So you want to make sure elbows are slightly bent and pointing downward. It's tough to see when I wear this baggy uniform, but my elbow, even though it's bent, I have it out to the side. Here I can drop it downward. It's in a much more natural, much more supported position. And this goes for both arms, not just this hand. I'm not going to roll up both sleeves for this one, okay? So again, I'm going to start from my cloud hands position. Step across 1, step across 2, wrist to wrist. I've already stepped in position. I can turn the waist a little bit as I bring the hands back and I extend the foot out, up, and then extending both, but keeping both elbows down and slightly bent, okay? Keep these components in mind and it will really improve your Tai Chi form. Okay, so there you have it. It's a simple transition, but it's the small details that make the big difference. Not only in the appearance of the form, but in your Tai Chi in general, because when you're moving, you want to keep that consistent energy that you have during the middle of your technique as you do between the techniques. So this is why I put so much emphasis in Tai Chi Connection in this series, because these are the parts that we usually have the hardest time of keeping that constant focus, that constant flow, that constant energy in our Tai Chi training. So rather than having like the lights turned on, then turned off for a second, then turned on, then turned off for a second, we keep them on the whole time as we're moving from one position to the next. Okay, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button. And as always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bam.